Welcome back to the Arquette Show here on Talk Radio, 105.7 FM, 570 AM. As always, the number to call if you'd like to be a part of the program is 888-570-8010, 888-570-8010. You can, of course, text us at 59570 or email us at rod@knrs.com. Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to talk about what the president had to say yesterday about poverty, but I want to stay locally right now. There is a story by Dennis Romboy in the Deseret News today about the challenges that some landowners are now facing over the issue of transgender tenants and possibly in dealing with the new anti-discrimination law. And some apartment owners are now expressing some concern about that and trying to figure out how to deal with it. Joining us on our Newsmaker line right now is Paul Smith. Paul is the executive director of the Utah Apartments Association. Paul, how are you, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Paul, how big of a challenge is this going to be, do you think?
Well, I'm worried that it's a little bit of a tempest in a teapot, to be honest with you. We just don't know, and that's why we're looking for clarification, both from the UALD and the LGBT community, as to what their expectations are for this new ordinance or for this new statute. Landlords want to do it right. We haven't really, in the past, had much problem with sexual orientation or gender ID discrimination, and the Apartment Association, in fact, supported and helped draft the Salt Lake City and the Ogden ordinances. The Ogden ordinance, by the way, had a exception for student housing in it. So we're just not sure, Rod.
Okay. What are some of the more common questions coming to you in the association from apartment owners around the state asking about this new law? What are some of the key questions that are issues that are already rising as a result of this?
Well, as you read in the story, we've seen 3 cases in the past past few months, where a male who identified as a female applied for student housing and wanted to be put in a female unit. And in all 3 of those cases, 2 of them were in Utah County, one of them was in Logan. The girls and their parents were not very comfortable with this. And so the new law was not into effect. I don't know exactly how it was resolved, but I know that in all of those cases it was resolved without that person moving in to the girls' apartment. But with the law changing yesterday, we just want some clarification. What can landlords do? What can we ask? What can we say? What are we going to get in trouble if we do?
Okay, are there some exemptions in there, Paul, at this point for student housing issues?
There's not. Not in the state law.
So does it need to be changed, do you think, or can you live or work around it at this point?
Well, I don't think we're taking a position on that right now because we just don't know how the UALD, that's the Anti-Discrimination and Labor Division, will interpret and enforce this. One of the things that's interesting about fair housing in the state of Utah is we have quite a good track record. Landlords are trying to do it right, and we have a great record of doing it world-class. Mm-hmm. We have about 100 fair housing complaints a year, somewhere in that range. Most of them are without merit, and so there's usually only 3 or 4 findings a year. And so anytime you add new protected classes, we of course worry that there's going to be hassle and litigation and cost for landlords, and at the end of the day there won't really have been a lot of discrimination or a lot of real merit to it.
Over the years, Paul, you mentioned you had about 100 fair housing complaints. Are they basically the same, or do they vary a lot?
Well, the vast majority of them in the state of Utah, Rod, are service animals and dealing with disability. And it's an interesting parallel, this service animal thing. Even if you ask the advocates for the disability and service animal experts, if you ask them what percentage of the requests landlords get to allow service animals, or assisted animals is what we call them, most of them would say at maximum it's half. Maybe at worst it's only a third of them are legitimate. So that means in many, many cases we have people who want an animal. It's not really something they need for a disability, but they don't want to pay the pet fee or the pet rent or whatever, and so they're kind of taking advantage of a law designed to protect other people. And we worry that could happen a little bit with this. The law's very narrowly crafted to protect people, but are we going to have people abuse it? We just don't know.
At this point, as you look down the road here, are there some apartment owners who are concerned that they may lose business as a result of this new anti-discrimination law? You said you're trying to be very cooperative here. Are there some who are concerned they may lose tenants as a result of this new law?
Yeah, the concern is, let's say you have 6 students or 6 girls in a student housing apartment, and you do something that angers them, and so 5 of them move out, and you go a semester with loss of revenue. So, landlords are, of course, business people. They're trying to treat their customers with respect and properly, but at the end of the day, to pay their bills and feed their family, they've got to make sure that they're operating effectively and as a business.
Paul, how long do you think it will take to figure all of this out, or are you going to have a new angle every year to have to deal with, or do you think you can get this figured out fairly soon?
I think we can figure this out soon. Troy Williams with Equality Utah called me today, and he set up a meeting for our legal teams and his legal team and the UALD to get together and kind of hash this out. We've been very successful on disability issues in Utah with landlords and the Disability Law Center dealing with things, and so we're optimistic that Equality Utah and the UALD and the Apartment Association can get together and work this out. And then we can mutually give guidance to landlords. We can say, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, because, again, everybody wants to do this right. Nobody wants to violate the law.
When you have a fair housing complaint, a final question for you, Paul, is it a difficult process to iron out, or sometimes going to be ironed out fairly quickly?
Well, sometimes it gets ironed out very quickly. Landlords that own less than 4 rental units are exempt from fair housing.
Yeah.
So if the complaint is against a small landlord and they immediately determine that he doesn't have enough units to make him qualify for fair housing, it could be over that fast. In other cases, legal counsel is involved. They try to do what we call conciliations and get together and work it out. In rare cases, it has to go all the way to what we call a finding or to court, but most of the time they get worked out. But landlords would tell you, we don't like them. We think a lot of the times these complaints are retaliatory. We didn't give someone's deposit back, or we didn't, or we started an eviction for another reason, criminal activity or non-payment, and we get accused of discrimination. So yes, they are burdensome to Utah landlords.
All right. Well, Paul, I appreciate your time and good luck in trying to figure all of this out.
Thanks, Rod. Appreciate it.
All right. On our Newsmaker line, we've been talking with Paul Smith. He is the executive director of the Utah Apartment Association. This on a story in the Deseret News today about how landlord owners of apartment complexes larger than 4 apartments who fall under the new rule of the anti-discrimination law that we have here in the state and went into effect yesterday, how they deal with all of this. All right. More coming up on the Rod Arquette Show and Talk Radio 105.7 FM, 570 AM.
Talk Radio 105.7 FM, 570 AM, KNRS.